Hello, I am your RusAme reader, Crowsong, and today I will be reading to you a one-shot by Unnamed Untold. It is called Recovery, and the chapter is titled Petals Flutter Like How Stars Shine. This is my second time recording this. Y'all, here's to hoping this one doesn't corrupt and yeet itself into the void. Anyway, on to the start of this one. 1768. I followed the young boy down the path. At 16, he really isn't a boy anymore, but he is still far younger than I am. He urged me to move faster, obviously wanting to show me something. I followed not far behind him, a smile on my face. He may be very energetic, and that may be annoying to most, but I find his enthusiasm refreshing from the normal, more boring behavior of other nations. "Come on, Russia, you're so slow," he whined from at the top of the small hill. "Нет, you are too impatient, Podsonna. When you learn to slow down, you will find that everything will go by faster," I told him as I steadily climbed the hill. "But I don't want to slow down. There's too much to do," he whined again. "If you do not slow down, then you will not enjoy the moment. Then what is the purpose of doing what you want to do?" I asked him with a raised brow. "The climb, duh! I have more fun in the process of doing something than whenever I get done with it. That's why I bounce around so much. I have more things to do, adventures to fulfill," he explained from where he now stood on a large, flattish rock. "Hurry up!" "Calm down, I am at the top. Now, what is it that you want me to see?" I stopped talking as I looked over the sea of yellow that was laid out before me. A gentle breeze flew past, making the tall flowers sway, even causing a few to lose petals. "I knew you'd love it," the sunny nation exclaimed. "I planted this in the spring, and I've been dying to show you. I had hoped that you would show up before they died. Luckily you did." "You planted all of this?" I asked him after a long moment of silence. "Yep, all sunflowers except one rosebush in the center. That one is for me. I knew how much you loved sunflowers, so I decided to plant you some here, since they don't grow well in Russia, as a thank you for your friendship," he said, looking away shyly. My eyes misted a little at the thoughtful gift. I cleared my eyes and turned to face the younger male. "Thank you, Frederica. This is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me." "It was no problem, Vanya. Now, come on, let's play. Race you to the field," he shouted, running down the hill. With a roll of my eyes, I chased after the younger nation. We played hide and seek and tag in the large flower patch. We made sure to be careful of the delicate flowers and ducked in between them. Every once in a while, I would catch the fast blue-eyed male. The sound of laughter could be heard from the top of the hill. We played until the sun had set, bringing an end to another summer day. We sat on the flat rock that overlooked the small sunflower-filled valley. We watched as the bright yellowed flowers turned to a silver moonlight. The flowers swayed gently in the still warm breeze. It was quiet and peaceful. I turned to talk to America about them when I noticed his attention was focused upward. I looked up to the dark, star-filled sky. The moon was full tonight, and the summer constellations shone brightly. I felt a wave of peace wash over me as I gazed up at them, for what has to be the millionth time in my life. "What do you think the stars are made of?" America asked quietly. "Who knows? Faraway lights, the spirits of our ancestors. Your guess is as good as mine." I told him with a shrug. I looked back down at him. In his brilliant sapphire eyes, I could see the reflection of all the stars. They shone just as brightly in his eyes as they did in the sky, if not more so. "They're so beautiful," I heard the smaller nations whisper. "Yes, they are," I said, not looking back up, just into his eyes. I felt my heart flutter lightly and a new emotion come over me. It wasn't entirely new, since I felt it around the young nation before, but I had no clue as to what it was. I felt a tickle in the back of my throat and started to cough. America looked over at me, worried, as I tried to work something out of my throat. After a few moments of hacking and coughing, I coughed out 2 petals, one from a rose, another from a sunflower. We both looked at the small petals in shock. "Dude, are you okay? How did a couple petals even get in your throat?" he asked, worried, as he tried to get a better look at them. "I do not know. Maybe some had flown into my mouth while I was chasing you around, and I just hadn't noticed," I suggested, but I was extremely doubtful of it. This isn't the kind of thing a person normally just misses. "Yeah, maybe," he said, very doubtful as well. "Let's just forget about this," I said, letting the petals flutter away. "It's about time I took you home." "Yeah, I guess," he nodded. He followed behind me as I led the way back to his cabin. We were almost there when I turned around to check on him, make sure he was still there. It wouldn't have been the first time he had strayed off while on the way back. In fact, it was something he does quite often. Instead of seeing him gone, I saw him staring back up at the stars again. "Why do you still look up at the stars?" I asked him. "I want to touch one," he answered, looking me straight in the eyes. I laughed. "That is not possible, little one. They are too far out of reach. Only the birds come close because of their wings. We are human, we cannot fly." "I'll find a way. I'll go touch the moon first, though. It looks the closest. Then, when I get to touch the stars, I'll take you with me, he declared. That is a sweet gesture, but it is impossible. You will not be able to do that, I told him again. With all the determination he could muster, he said, "Watch me." And watch him I did. Throughout the years, I watched him accomplish one great feat after another. I watched him take on the world's strongest empire and win twice. I watched him keep his country together when it was so bent on tearing itself apart. I watched him lead us to victory during both world wars. I watched him take flight. I watched him join me in space. I watched him touch the moon. Over time, I had learned what the feeling deep inside my chest was. It was love for the boy, not friendly or familial, but romantic love. With each of his accomplishments, I felt my pride and love for him grow stronger and stronger. I fell in love with every part of him, his strength, his kindness, his compassion, his beauty. Every time I saw him, I fell deeper and deeper. But as my love grew stronger, so did my coughing. What started out as only a few petals soon turned into me coughing up entire flowers. I could feel the entire flowers in my lungs and around my heart. With each of his accomplishment, I hid myself away. Not out of anger or jealousy over the younger nation, like so many believed. It was to hide my condition from the others. I spent years researching what it could possibly be, and eventually I found what I was looking for in an old Asian mythology. Hanahaki disease is what it was called. It was when the lungs and hearts filled with flower petals, and the flowers when someone feels one-sided love. So rare and unfeasible. There are no confirmed cases. The only way to cure it was for the other to fall in love with the victim. If not, then the victim will eventually die, suffocating on the flowers. My desire to confess was stronger than ever, both to tell him how I truly feel and to live. However, I would never get the chance. Life had other plans for us, in which we would be enemies instead of friends or lovers. So now I watch him from across the meeting table. I watch his smile as he speaks with the others, how his eyes light up with the stars when they approach a topic he loves. The cute way he tilts his head when he's really paying attention. I watch the way his hair shines in the setting sun, making it glow like a golden fire. I turned my face into my scarf and coughed. I learned how to cough without ever being noticed. My scarf muffles the sound and catches the flowers and petals. I have full control over my shoulders so they don't shake when I let out the coughs. And I learned how to hold it off until all attention was diverted away from me. I looked down to see that I had expelled nearly a whole rose and part of a sunflower. It was getting worse all the time, and I knew my time was near. It was hard to breathe, and sometimes I couldn't. I could feel the roots constricting around my lungs and heart. It would not be long now, and I knew it. That is why I wrote my dear America this letter. I do not believe I will make it through the next couple of days. I can't go to my grave knowing that I never said anything at all. So this was my solution. My only solution. As the meeting came to an end, I made sure to walk by the American on my way out. I lightly bumped into him, and as I did, I slipped a letter into his briefcase. I made a hasty apology and ran out the room. I didn't wait to hear his reply. I was out of the building and on my way home before I even realized. With a sigh, I took one last look around New York City, knowing this was my last time here. America's POV. I stared at the large, snowy nation who was retreating from the room. Him bumping into me wasn't that uncommon because of our little fights and disputes. Him apologizing for it was, though. I shrugged it off. He probably thought I was someone else. I said goodbye to Japan and Italy and left the building, feeling both relieved that the meetings were over and sad because I couldn't spend time with my once upon a time best friend. Even though we had been at odds with each other for years, I still missed playing with Russia in our sunflower patch. I kept up the patch as it was a symbol of our friendship so long ago. Sometimes I sit in it for hours and remember all the fun times we had when I was younger. How every time I saw the older nation, it meant fun and happiness. Now all it meant was heartache and problems. I sighed heavily and got in my car. I was on my way to my apartment in New York. I got it about 7 years ago because of how often meetings take place here. I don't know why, but New York seemed like a great place to hold about 30% of all meetings. My apartment was on the top floor. It had a balcony, a large living room, a decent-sized kitchen, a place for a dining table, and a large bedroom with a bathroom and walk-in closet attached. The place was hardly decorated beyond a few knickknacks here and there, and a flag. Even the paint and carpeting was a calm, dull cream. It costs a pretty penny to keep, but the government pays half of the rent because it is used more for business than pleasure. I set my briefcase down at the dining room table. I walked into the kitchen and made myself some dinner. I wasn't too picky, so I picked a microwavable lasagna. Not the best, but enough to fill my stomach. While it cooked in the microwave, I changed into a t-shirt and some comfy pants. I walked back to the table and sat down with my nuked meal. I had papers I needed to go through, so I planned on doing that while I ate. They were mostly notes from the meeting and a few documents that needed to be filled out. 2 hours later, and I was almost done with all of my paperwork. I was going through my case one more time to make sure I had taken everything out when I noticed a rectangular piece of paper. I reached in and pulled it out, quickly recognizing it as an envelope. My name was written on the front in a very familiar handwriting. It took me a moment to recognize the handwriting as Russia's. We haven't been on good terms for years. So what on this green planet could he possibly want to tell me through a letter? Intrigued, I opened the letter. Dear America, I know we haven't talked much on friendly terms in nearly 50 years, but there is something I have been meaning to tell you since long before then. Remember that day we were talking about the stars? You said that you wanted to touch the moon, but I believed it to be impossible then. Then you said, watch me. I remember that day like it was yesterday, because it was the day I fell in love with you. I pulled back from the paper, eyes wide, My cheeks flushed a bright red. Russia was in love with me? Surely this had to be some joke. There was no other possible explanation. We had been at each other's throats for years. Yet he sounded so sincere in the letter. He brought up the day I showed him the patch, a very important day for us. He wouldn't do that just to mess with me. You told me to watch you, and I did. I watched you complete amazing feats that I once thought to be impossible. And the more I watched you, the more I fell in love. I fell in love with your courage, your kindness, your determination to persevere and win. I fell in love with your star-filled eyes, the way your smile made the sun look dull in comparison. I didn't realize it was love until it was too late. We were in the Cold War and tensions were high between our countries. When it ended, I could never find the courage to tell you how I truly felt. It always seemed like the wrong time or there was something else we needed to do first. I was also scared of how you might have reacted, to be honest. The only reason I have the courage to tell you now is because I will regret not telling you. The reason is that I am dying from a disease that was believed to be mythical. It is called Hanahaki disease. It is where flowers fill up the lungs and heart of the victim. Remember when I coughed up the rose and sunflower petals? Neither of us knew where they came from. Well, they came from my lungs. I couldn't stand going to my grave having never confessed my love for you. I wished I could have known what your answer will be, but by the time you read this, I may be dead or close to it. I am sorry to put this on you, but I had to tell you. I love you, America. Goodbye. With all the love in my heart, Russia, aka Ivan Blackenskye. I dropped the paper on the table and stared at it for a long time, tears pouring down my face. I picked it up to read it again and again and again, but the words didn't change. The same message was written before me. Russia, my best friend, was dying? No, this couldn't actually be happening. Russia couldn't really be dying. This had to be a joke. It had to be. I picked up my phone and dialed Russia's number. It rang and I prayed that he would pick up. He would say it was all a joke and that he can't believe I actually fell for it. I'll be mad, we'll exchange a few choice words, and then one of us will hang up. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen any of the 12 times I called. It didn't happen when I called his cell, his work phone, or his home phone. He didn't pick up. It had been half an hour since I read the letter. I was pacing around the apartment, tears still falling down my face. I had left him 6 messages begging him to call me back. Part of me kept thinking this was one of his many mind games, but I know him. This isn't a game. He would never go this far. He never ignored more than 3 of my attempts to get a hold of him, let alone 12. I stopped mid-pace as it finally sank in. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a sick joke. He was really dying. Before long, this world would be without my best friend. I sucked in a harsh breath and clenched my fist. No, he ain't dying. Not if I have something to say about it. I called up the pilot for my private jet. It takes 10.5 hours to get to Moscow from New York. My jet can do it in about 9. He is ready to go by the time I get there. The next flight to Russia isn't going to leave until the morning, and by then I may be too late. I got in my car and sped all the way to the private airport. When I got there, my pilot was waiting for me by the stairs. The pump was filling the tank with gas. How long till we're airborne? I asked curtly, walking in. 10 minutes, sir. He responded, sounding a little confused. Not that I blamed him. I was normally very relaxed and polite to him. I also never demand him to fly me somewhere on such short notice. This was a dramatic change in attitude, and it would confuse anyone. The only reason I called him is because of how frazzled I was right now. Thanks, Jack. I'm sorry I called you out of the blue like this. I know you were at home with your family, and I hate taking you away from them. I told him apologetically. A situation came up and I need to leave as soon as possible. Don't worry, I agreed to every aspect of this job. That includes sudden flights. You've never done this before, so what has you so wound up? It must be important, he said with a smile. Thank you again. I really appreciate this, I told him with a small half-smile. Anytime. He tipped his hat and left me. I was sitting in one of the nice chairs. I tried calling Russia again to see if he'd pick up this time. No such luck. I sighed heavily and put the phone down on the table. Sarah, my personal flight attendant, brought over a couple of snacks and drinks. Hey there, do you need anything? She asked with a calming smile. Just a bottle of water, I told her with a sigh. Sure thing, here you go. She handed me the bottle and left. The plane jolted and I knew we were taking off. I rubbed my tired eyes and rested my head on the table. It was quiet for a long moment. The only sounds were from the jet engines. I almost jumped out of my skin when I heard my cell ring. I didn't even bother to check the caller ID before answering it. Hello? I asked, hope lacing my voice. America, why in the world are you heading to Russia? You have work that needs to be done here. My boss's gravelly voice came through the phone's speaker. My heart sank in disappointment. Sir, something important came up between Russia and I. I really need to go over there right now, I told him vaguely. I didn't want to spread it all around that Russia was really sick. There was more than one nation out there that would love to get their hands on him in such a vulnerable state. Whatever it is, it can wait. Where are those documents I needed you to fill out? Sir, I really... Or how about that load of paperwork I have for you here in Washington? Or those ones you need to get done back at your house? Or the new ones that are sure to pile up while you're gone? How about... You know what? I shouted, cutting him off. Take that paperwork and shove it up your ass. I hung up on him and slammed my phone onto the table. It rang a few more times after that. It was my boss every time. I only knew because I checked the caller ID to see if it was Russia finally calling me back. Nope, just this dick. When my phone finally stopped going off like crazy, I laid my head back down on the table, exhausted. First the meeting, then the letter, now this. There was so much I had to do. But the question is, why am I doing this? Sure, he was my best friend all those years ago. We had some fun times, but that ended before the Cold War. We caused each other so much pain over the years. Surely that alone relieves me from any obligation to see if he would be okay. Yes, he confessed to me, but he seemed so sure he was dying in the letter. That was the whole reason behind the letter. I could have just left it at that. A confession letter and nothing more. No rescue, no 7-hour flight to Russia, no dozens of calls. I could have just left it as it was. No one would have known. Yet my first reaction was to see if he was okay. And upon failure of that, I jumped right on the first plane I could to rush over to him. I dragged Jack away from his family, something I hate doing, and snapped at my boss, something I'm going to regret doing. I have no obligation to him, but I'm still running to his side the second he needs help. I don't have to try and save him, but every thought of never seeing him again makes my heart ache like it's being ripped apart into little tiny pieces. Fresh tears poured down my face. My throat tightened, making it hard to swallow. A sob shook through my entire body. Why did the thought of him dying hurt so much? Why was the thought of never being able to see him or look into his eyes or talk to him make me want to cry my eyes out? I felt a spark of warmth in my chest as a memory came up. It was the first time I ever met him. He was so much taller than me. I remember playing with him throughout the years as I grew. I remember him teaching me carpentry skills so I could build my own house. I remember attending meetings with him for our countries. As more and more memories came up, the warmth got warmer and warmer and warmer until I finally realized why. I loved him. I sat up in shock at this realization. I've been in love with him for years. That's why it hurt so much when the Cold War started and our friendship ended. That's why it hurts so much now, knowing that I may never see him again. I don't want to lose him because I love him. I want to hold him and be held by him. I want to kiss him. I want to be near him. I can't lose him. Now I am more determined than before to save him. It was a long trip to Russia. I had spent most of the time worried and pacing up and down the plane. My boss tried calling again every few hours, but I ignored him. When we got close, I took a few deep breaths to calm down and picked up my phone. I typed in a number I don't use that much. The phone rang for a moment, and a nervous-sounding voice answered. Hello? Yo, Lithuania, dude, I need a little bit of help. I said, trying to sound as cheery as possible. Ah, Mr. America, what can I do for you? He asked, sounding a little more confident now that he knew it was only me. I'm on my way to Russia's house for a small meeting. The only problem is that he forgot to tell me where it is. I tried calling him like a dozen times, but he won't pick up the phone. So I figured I could get directions from you. I said, making up a lie. He didn't need to know the truth. I know that he'll tell Poland, and Poland will tell the world. Oh, you need to know where Mr. Russia lives? Sure, I can give you directions. After a small conversation with him, I hung up. We were almost in Moscow. Because of the time differences, it was almost 9 at night. I left yesterday at 8 at night, and the trip has only taken us about 9 hours. Yet a full day has passed since I read the letter. Funny how time zones work. I got out of the jet and thanked Jack and Sarah one more time, and then booked it. I called a taxi up since I don't have the time to rent a car. I gave him the directions to Rush's house, and we were on our way. It took us almost a full hour to get there. He didn't even go all the way up to the house. He just dropped me off at the edge of the woods that Russia lived in. Seriously? Why can't you go all the way up? I asked him, irritated. You want me to drive in the dark forest because your friend lives in a house there. I am not stupid. I stop here. I will go no further, he argued. Whatever, fine. I don't have time for this, I said, irritated. I handed him the money and started running down the path. My guess is that it was the road to his house and was hardly ever used. It looked more like a dirt path than a real road, to be honest. Not that I blame it for hardly being used. This house is really out there. As I ran, clouds of my breath could be seen in the fading sunlight. It was the middle of spring back home, and while that was the case here as well, it was still much colder than back at home. I was thankful that I had my jacket, but I still wished that I had chosen to wear much warmer clothes. After a long jog, I could finally make out a large house in the distance. It was actually more like a mansion than a house. It looked old, but still well cared for. In the driveway was Rush's car, so I knew he was home. I ran up to the front steps and rang the doorbell. I waited a few minutes before ringing again, and not a single sound came from the house. Worry creeped into my heart the longer it remained silent. So I decided to pull a stunt that Russia used to pull on me all the time during the Cold War. I pulled out a few items from my jacket and picked the lock. It came undone after a few moments. Once I was inside, I looked around. It was almost more like stepping into a museum than a house. There were a lot of old and beautiful things in his house, such as paintings, vases, and small statues. As much as I would have loved to study all the artifacts in his house, I was on a mission. If I was dying, my bed would be the place where I would go. And I was hoping that it was the same case for him. Going on how most mansions are structured, I headed up to the second floor and looked for the master bedroom. I opened a lot of different doors to a lot of different bedrooms, most of which look like they haven't been used in years. I opened every room except for one. It was the one at the far end of the hall, covered in shadows. Steadying my nerves, I pushed the door open. The first thing I noticed was this room was much larger than the others. The main color scheme was red and gold. Red walls with a gold pattern, red drapes with gold tassels and patterns. Dark red carpet that looked really good, to be honest. I looked to the large canopy bed, hoping to see the large nation. To my great relief, he was there, but fear gripped my heart when I noticed how unnaturally still he was. I couldn't even see if he was breathing. I ran to his bed and let out a loud gasp. There were flowers and petals. Some were full, others were missing pieces. Some part of me didn't believe him when he said that his lungs were filling up with flowers. It was so unbelievable that I doubted it were really true. Now the evidence stared me in the face. Oh God, Russia. How did this even happen? I whispered to myself. How do I fix this? I wasn't too sure on what to do, but since he had said it had something to do with his heart and lungs, I decided to check those first. I brought my ear down to his chest, having to push his sweater up first, so I could listen to his heartbeat. It was quiet and very weak. Next, I pressed my ear against one of his lungs to hear his breathing. It was faint, shallow, and ragged, almost like someone's lungs had filled with water. I followed the path up, trying to see where it ended. I was all the way to the middle of his throat before I heard a change. I pulled my head back and looked up and down the larger nation. Okay, buddy, I'm not sure what to do, but I'll do my best, I promised him. I had to find some way to remove the plants from inside of him, since a human hand can't fit down a throat, or at least not without a lot of damage and force. I couldn't just pull it out. The plants could have also damaged his lungs if they were wrapped around the alveoli or bronchioles. Besides, I still have to get the ones wrapped around his heart, too. That's not something I can just reach down and pull out. That leaves only one other option. I'll have to cut him open and remove them myself. How would I even do it? I don't have any of the necessary equipment here. I could always make do, but this is the lungs and heart. I can't afford to make mistakes. It takes a while for the lungs to heal, and the heart doesn't. But what choice do I have? Sit here and watch him die? Take him to a hospital? He'll be dead before I even get him there. And I doubt the doctors would believe me if I told them. So that leaves me with at-home surgery. I'll need a few different things, a needle, some sort of thread. I'm sure I can find alcohol here to sterilize everything. My train of thought was cut off by loud coughing. While I was busy thinking about how to fix him, I had noticed he was getting worse. A fresh wave of panic shot through me as I stared helplessly down at the snowy nation. While his coughing fit continued, I did my best to help. I tried to remove the flowers and petals from his mouth as they came, but soon I noticed it wasn't slowing down. He stopped coughing up the flowers, but his chest was heaving like he was trying to. His arms started thrashing, and he was tearing at a specific spot on his neck. I realized one was stuck in his throat. I had to straddle his chest with my legs, pressing down on his arms to get him to stop thrashing. His eyes opened wide for a brief moment and made contact with mine. They then rolled to the back of his head. He completely stopped moving. I opened his mouth as wide as I could, and to my luck, I could see part of the flower. It was a large sunflower that got caught in the back of his throat. Being as gentle as I possibly could, I reached back and grabbed part of it. It was hard to remove because of its size. I slowly moved it out, trying not to rip the fragile flora. When I finally managed to remove the yellow flower, I expected him to start breathing again. To my abject horror, he didn't. I felt around the back of his neck to see if there was anything else blocking his airway. I bit my lip nervously, not sure what to do. From the back of my mind, I vaguely remember my brother teaching me how to give CPR. Alright, buddy, I ain't giving up on you yet, I told him as a new determination settled in. I scooted down a little to get off of his chest. Then I pinched his nose and took a deep breath. I brought my mouth to his, and I slowly let out the breath, not sure how much was needed to fill his lungs, with all the plants in the way. Then, when they felt full, I pulled off and started chest compressions. I had to be gentle so I didn't break his ribs. I kept repeating the process over and over, tears falling down my face. With zero luck. After what felt like an eternity, I gave up and collapsed on his chest. God damn it, Russia. Why now? Why did you tell me now that you're dead? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I would have helped you. I cried into the room. With each spoken word, I pounded on his chest. Damn it! You were my best friend. I would have done anything to help you. I love you. Oh God, Russia, I love you so much. I don't want to lose you. Please. What about all of the things we promised to do? I still have to take you to go see the stars and touch them. So you can't die now. Not now. I love you. I whispered the last part with a sob. A few powerful sobs racked through my body. I clenched his long coat tightly in my fists. My face was buried into his broad chest. Salty tears fell like a never-ending waterfall. My heart felt like it had shattered into a million pieces, never to be truly put back together again. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I felt a hand on my back. I looked up with wide, tear-stained eyes. Russia was breathing. He was alive. I jolted up to relieve the pressure on his chest. I hovered over him, watching as he coughed up another flower. I carefully pulled it away to help him breathe. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew the flower was unusual, but now wasn't the time that I could focus on that. Once the flower was out of the way, he started breathing more clearly. Both of his hands settled onto my waist as he slowly came back to the world. I brought my face close enough to his so that I could feel his breath on my cheeks. My hands were on his broad shoulders for balance. I stayed like that, hoping he wouldn't slip back into death's grip. After a long wait, deep amethyst eyes looked up into bright sapphire. Confusion and a bit of fatigue clouded them for a moment. A hand made its way up to my face, gently stroking my tear-stained cheeks. Before long, remembrance dawned on his face. His eyes opened wide. How? I never thought I was going to see you again, he asked in bewilderment. Well, I found the letter you gave me and took the first private jet here, I stated as I sat up. I broke in, like how you used to do at my house. I found you lying here, coughing up flowers and petals. I tried my best to help, but I didn't know what to do. Then you started choking on a sunflower. I took too long in removing it, and you died. I told him, hints of a sob lacing my voice. My heart clenched in fear as I remembered just how close I was to losing him. What else did you do? You had to have done something. Nothing can cure this disease except... he said, his voice trailing off. Except for what? Whatever it is, I'll do it, I told him, almost desperately. You already did it, he said, in slight awe, eyes going wide. What? What do you mean? What's the cure? I asked him again. The cure is for you to confess your love for me. It is the only way, he said in amazement over the whole situation. What do you mean by that? That isn't a cure. It can't be. I mean, I did confess to you and you started breathing again, but that can't be all there was to it. It had to be a coincidence, right? I asked, confused and distressed. I just couldn't fathom how something so simple and non physical could cure something like this. Of all things. Like, all other things need medicine of some kind to cure, or of another kind, more logical things to be cured. They they also take time to cure and to fully be rid of something. But this this needs a human emotion to cure it, and instantly. On the other hand, I have to understand that this was a disease that was not only mythical, but should be scientifically impossible. It's hard to comprehend, even with living proof staring me in the eyes. Speaking of being stared in the eyes, I just noticed how intently Russia was looking back at me. I gave him a confused look with a hint of concern. Hey, are you okay? You'll love me? He said just above a whisper. I felt my face go bright red from embarrassment. My cheeks felt like they were on fire, and I dropped my head and gave a nod in silent confirmation to his statement. I felt a hand wrap around the back of my neck and pull me down. Before I could even comprehend what was going on, I was drawn into a long kiss. My mind went blank, but I pushed back into the gentle kiss. A second later, it wasn't fast or messy, but there was a slight hint of desperation to it, almost like he thought this was a dream that he could wake up from any minute now. I kissed him back with as much passion as I could to assure him that I was here. His hand rested on my waist and held me closer, like he never wanted to let go. After a very long moment, we had to pull apart for air. We reluctantly pulled back, both of us gasping like we had run a marathon. Both of us had red flushed cheeks from the intimate moment. Deep amethyst was once again staring into bright sapphire. I broke the eye contact when I rested my head on his chest. Medica? I'm fine, just tired, I told him with a small yawn. So, what now? With your disease, I mean. Nothing. In time, I will expel the rest of the plants, and it will be like it never happened, he explained, running his large hand up and down my back in a soothing manner. Okay, that makes sense. That's the only part of this situation that makes any semblance of sense, I said with a snort and a roll of my eyes. I looked at the flowers still littering across the bed. So, sunflowers and roses? The flower or flowers that the victim is stuck with more often than not has some sort of meaning related to the victim or the victim's loved one. In this case, sunflowers are my favorite and roses are yours, he told me. Mm-hmm, I hummed and blinked slowly. Fatigue washed over me. I've been up for a grand total of 25 hours straight. Mentally and physically and emotionally draining hours. So, where does this leave us? I know how you feel, and now you know how I feel. Where do we go from here? Well, if I have it my way, I will never let go of you. You will stay here with me forever, and we will live happily, he said with a chuckle. Okay, that's cute. But how about in reality? I hold you for as long as I can until you have to go home. Come next meeting, I will introduce you as my lover and we shall share many wonderful evenings, or as many as our job allows. We will find time for each other when we can and will no longer be alone, even when we are apart. He said with all the determination and care he had. I felt my cheeks heat up again at his words. I nodded my head against his chest. Yeah, that sounds about right, except for one thing. And what would that be? He asked fondly. You forgot the part about where I'm going to take you to touch the stars, I told him with a small laugh. Nah, he chuckled. I did forget to mention that part. I yawned again, this time much louder. Are you tired? Yeah, unlike you, I haven't been in a bed for the last 25 hours or so. I huffed half-heartedly. My eyes felt heavy, and my movements were a bit sluggish. Go to sleep, America. I will still be here in the morning, he whispered into my ear. You better be. I yawned. Hours of stress left me completely spent. And now that I knew there was no danger to Russia at all, I finally relaxed. My eyes closed as I slowly drifted off to sleep. In my dream, we were playing around the stars under the beautiful night sky, hopping to and fro from each star, sliding down the star and color-filled arms of galaxies. Flower petals danced around us in a gentle display. Back and forth we jumped, staying just out of each other's reach. I awoke a few hours later in an unfamiliar bed. Next to me was a strange heat source, but I didn't feel threatened in the slightest. The air smelled of sunflowers and roses, an odd but familiar scent. Despite what should be an alarming situation for anyone, I surprisingly felt at peace. I pulled the covers up a little higher and snuggled into the unknown heat source. I felt a rumble of laughter as someone pulled me closer. I looked up to see the blurry outline of a very familiar nation. Go back to sleep, America. You are still tired. I'll come and wake you later, he said. I vaguely recognized the voice as belonging to Russia. Some urgent part of me wants to get up, but the warmth of the blankets and the soothing petting of my hair lulled me back to sleep. It was a dreamless sleep this time, and it was hours before I woke up again. I slowly sat up in the large bed and looked around. A part of me recognized this as Russia's room. I sat there, confused for a moment before remembering the events of last night. I quickly got up to go look for the larger nation. I stopped for just a second when I saw I wasn't wearing the same clothes as yesterday. My shirt and pants were different and too large for me. The pants were fine since they were tied with some sort of string. The shirt's sleeves kept slipping, though. My shoes were gone, and so was my jacket. A quick scan of the room showed me that my jacket weighed across a chair. But my shoes were nowhere to be seen. I noticed something interesting on the nightstand. It appeared to be some sort of flower. Not one that I've ever seen, though. It looked kind of like a sunflower, but was red in the middle, and that slowly faded to yellow. There were also way more petals on it than I've ever seen on any other sunflowers. Not to mention, they were shaped oddly. They were more round at the base instead of skinny all the way through. It honestly looked like someone crossed a sunflower with a rose. I picked it up and realized this was the weird flower he coughed up last night. It seemed to have almost doubled in size since last night, though. It was way too big to fit through his esophagus the way it was now. I hummed and set it back down. I'll come back to this later, after I make sure Russia is okay. I walked out of the room and followed the vague memory I had of the layout of the large house. The first place I decided to check was the kitchen. As I got closer to the kitchen, I could hear someone humming inside. I walked into the doorway to see Russia was there. I felt a wave of relief crash over me to see that he was okay. Seeing him up and doing things had to be a good sign. In fact, he seemed to be cooking something. My empty stomach rumbled when the smell of food hit my nose. Probably hearing my loud stomach, Russia turned to face me. A small smile spread across his face. America, it is nice to see you up again, he told me and motioned to a seat at a small table. I sat down and he placed a plate of food in front of me. Hey, how long was I asleep? You fell asleep about at midnight last night. It is about 4 in the afternoon now, so you were asleep for nearly 16 hours. Yikes, I must have been even more tired than I thought, I said, surprised. Nah, you got up earlier, but only long enough to drink some water. I came up to check on you about an hour ago, and you looked close to waking up. That is why I went ahead and made dinner. I knew you would be hungry when you woke, he told me with a smile. Hey, thanks, dude. That's really nice of you, I told him with a slight blush. I had to pull the sleeve up again. It kept slipping. I noticed that Russia had an intense look in his eyes, but it disappeared when I started talking again. So, how are you doing? Is your cough any better today? I coughed up a few flowers today, but I could actually feel my lungs clear this time. They feel much stronger now, he said, placing a hand over his chest. That's great. You'll be back to tip-top shape in no time then, I grinned happily. After so many years of fighting with the guy, it felt great to talk with him as a friend again. An image of last night popped into my head, and I remembered that we were more than just friends now. A small blush spread across my cheeks as I remembered the kiss. Are you all right? You look a little red, he asked with a small smirk. Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm just remembering the kiss from last night, I said, looking away as my blush got brighter. I thought so. Would you like to reenact the kiss? He asked with an air of confidence around him. I nodded my head, way too nervous to speak. He took my hand and gently pulled me up from my seat. One hand rested on my waist, pulling me closer, while the other lifted my chin so that he could look me in the eyes. I looked up at him, mind going blank at what to do next. Luckily, he took charge and bent down to capture my lips in a passionate kiss. My arms tentatively reached up and wrapped around his neck. This kiss, unlike the one from last night, was filled with more heat and desire. There was a bit more force behind this one. I felt him push me back until my back hit the wall. His knee slid in between my legs, effectively keeping them parted. A tongue darted out and swiped across my bottom lip, asking for entrance. I hesitantly parted my lips to allow the new appendage in. I moaned when he swiped it around, warning his new territory. During the kiss, I felt something different, something I'd never really experienced before, something that turned my knees to jelly and lit a fire in my lower abdomen. I felt dominated, but I didn't mind for some reason. In fact, I enjoyed being pressed against the wall. I liked him being in control like this. The kiss was cut off by another coughing fit from the larger male. He turned his head to the side so he wouldn't cough in my face. Since there wasn't much I could do, I gently hugged him. Not hard enough to hinder the coughing, but enough so that he'd know I was here. I listened to his lungs. Though they still sounded congested, they were much clearer than yesterday. I moved my head to hear his heart. It sounded much more strong and clear. It was easy to tell that he was getting much better. "You okay?" I asked him when the coughs died down. I am okay," he said, looking into his hand. 3 roses, a sunflower, and a bunch of petals laid in his large hand. "It is almost completely gone." "That's good," I hummed, content. "Why don't you go sit down in the living room, and I'll bring you a cup of water?" "Okay, but you do know where the living room is, right?" he asked. "I don't, but I'm pretty sure I can find the living room," I snorted with a laugh. "Now, go sit down." He rolled his eyes and left. I filled him a cup of water and left the room. His house was a bit bigger than expected. It was full of twists and turns, lots of different rooms that hung off of the main halls. It took me a while to find where the living room was, to be honest, and when I finally got there, Russia was giving me a particularly smug look. "Don't give me that look. I told you I could find it, and I did," I said, sticking my tongue out. But it took you a while," he said with a smug look still on his face. Yeah. Hey, do you know where my phone is? I probably have more calls than a passed-out extrovert," I asked him. He gave me a weird look before pulling my phone out of his pocket. "Why do you have my phone?" "I was getting your number from it," he told me like it was obvious. "You could have just asked." Grief. I rolled my eyes and started looking through my missed calls and texts. Damn, I'm gonna be in so much trouble. I sighed heavily. "It can't be that bad," he told me. Well, the last thing I said to my boss was that he could shove paperwork up his ass. "You are going to be in very big trouble," he agreed, while shaking his head. "Yeah." "Hey, could you be quiet for a moment? I need to call him," I said while dialing his number. "You do realize it is dead of night in America right now, don't you?" he asked with a raised brow. "Yep. If I'm going down, I might as well make it spectacular," I laughed. He rolled his eyes, but didn't say anything else. I listened to the phone ring 3 times before a groggy voice answered. "Yo, what's up, boss?" America, what? It's about time you answered my calls. Do you have any idea how worried you made us? I was about to call the Marines in the morning if you didn't respond. He yelled at me. Dude, I'm fine. I told you something came up between us. You do realize that normally means you two are in another fight. He growled. Look, I'm fine, he's fine, we're fine, everything is fine. I tried soothing the furious man. Good, that means you'll be on the first flight back to America as soon as the storm clears up. He snapped. I looked out the window and was surprised to see that there was an actual storm going on. Yeah, I get you. I'll see you then. You better. He hung up the phone. Well, that could have gone a lot worse. I hummed happily. Okay, so apparently there is a storm. Nah, I noticed. He nodded his head. And it looks like you're going to be stuck with me until it blows over. I finished. I do not think I will mind, he said, pulling me into his lap. I fell on his lap rather clumsily, but he didn't mind. He pulled me closer to him and wrapped his arms around my waist. Russia? I asked with wide eyes and flushed cheeks. I told you last night, Dorogoya, that I was going to hold you for as long as I can until you have to go home, he said in between pressing kisses against my neck. I tried saying something, but all that came out was a small squeak. I blushed harder and turned my face away. I never once thought, in any lifetime, that I would be sitting on Russia's lap, as his lover. I never even thought we'd be friends again, but here we are, in that very situation. So I let him take the lead. Not going to fight me for control this time, America? He asked with a purr. No, I'm not. I don't have the experience to respond in this kind of situation. I'm not entirely sure of what to do, I admitted. If my blush got any hotter, I'm pretty sure I'd be on fire. You have never been with anyone? He asked, surprised. It's not like no one wanted me. I just didn't want anyone. I was never interested in trying to have a relationship with anyone. I huffed defensively. I'm sure. Anyone who can't see your beauty would have to be blind. He hummed. What are you doing? I asked the larger nation. I finally have the person I've loved for the last 2 centuries in my arms. There is only one thing I want to do, he whispered as he nibbled and kissed along my neck. I turned in his lap so I was facing him. I looked deep into his amethyst eyes, searching for something that would tell me this was all a bad joke, or that there was any anger, hatred, or disgust. Anything that would say that this was anything other than what I wholeheartedly wanted it to be. America, I know you are hesitant to believe me after all that has happened, but please do when I tell you that I love you, and I always have. He said with all the honesty he could. I gazed into his eyes while he talked. Not for a single second did his eyes say anything different. I bent down and kissed him as hard as I could. He didn't expect it, but he kissed back within a second. He pulled me flush against his chest, enough so that I could feel his now stronger heartbeat. Large hands ran down my sides, drawing out low moans, A shiver ran up my spine when he ran his hands down my thighs. He brought his hand up higher to rest on my ass. I let out a sharp gasp when he squeezed it. "Shall we take this to the bed?" he purred seductively in my ear. I shuddered and nodded my head, not trusting my voice at the moment. He scooped me up bridal style and carried me to his room. Nervousness fluttered in my stomach, but I didn't let it show. He carefully laid me on the bed, as if I were the most fragile thing in the universe. My heart fluttered and skipped a beat at the notion. He crawled on top of me and brought me into a passionate kiss. I kissed back, wrapping my arms around his neck. We laid there for a while, embracing one another. We eventually parted for much-needed air. As we laid, panting, we gazed into one another's eyes, deep purple like twilight and bright blue like the summer sky. All I could see in his eyes was love, adoration, desire, and fondness. The intensity of the emotions in his eyes made them light up in a way I've rarely ever seen. It made me wonder how I could have ever missed them before. It's so obvious to me now. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. I looked away with a small blush. "Do not hide from me, Mish. I want to see you." "I'm sorry, I'm just not used to people calling me beautiful," I told him. "Can I ask you something?" "What is it?" "What made you fall for me?" I asked him. "Simple. I saw the whole universe in your eyes," he said softly and kissed me. Third person. In the days to come, they will spend every second together to make up for the lost time. They will reminisce on old times, and they will sit under the beautiful stars that they loved so dearly and make plans for a future where they go out and touch one. A plan where they journey through space together and discover new worlds. 2 weeks after that, Russia will announce their relationship to the whole world. Quite a few cheered, and some looked frightful. A couple exchanged money for a one bet. The rest didn't give a damn. America will flush red, but won't deny the claim. He will sit by Russia as if he had always belonged there. Years later, they will watch as the rocket they designed and built together blasts off into the unknown, with nothing but faith to go by. They will stand side by side as they watch it get smaller and smaller. They will cheer and celebrate when the mission is declared successful. Years after that, they will be side by side once again, but this time in the rocket. America will fulfill his promise and take Russia to the nearest star. They will study the sunrose that Russia coughed up. It never wilted in all the years that they had it. It constantly dropped petals, but never enough to go completely bare. They will see that it will never die as long as they continue to love each other. And the more they love each other, the bigger it will bloom. All of that will come in time, but for now, they will stay in Russia's room. They will stay in each other's embrace. They will join together throughout the night under the brilliant stars when the sun comes up. They will still be side by side. They will still be holding each other, looking into the universes that are in each other's eyes. And all around them, Red yellow petals will flutter in the morning like how their stars shine in the night. And that is the end of this one. I hope you have enjoyed, and if you have any suggestions as to what I should read next, please tell me, whether it be in the Discord or in the comments section. Feel free to join us on the Discord.